a handmade block plane out of rare Zebrawood and Wenge. Stick around. So here's the wooden block plane project that we talked about at the beginning of the year. It's one of those things I've really wanted to do here in the wood shop. And I mentioned that I bought the kit from Veritas. It's a Canadian company. They make different sizes of blades that you can buy for the project, and it's just an awesome little kit. It comes with all of the hardware that you're going to need and some really great instructions on the inside that talk about the measurements and how you need to cut it. It's going to be a great project. I'm really looking forward to it. I happen to choose an O blade, which I believe has about a 25-degree bevel, and it's about 1 inch and 5/8 or 7/8 wide. I have to measure it again. I think it's 1 inch and 7/8 wide. But this is going to be a great little block plane to add to my collection. And the best thing, of course, is that you made it yourself. And so I had some options when I was thinking about the wood choices. And I thought about just going with a standard block, a single block, and cut it up. But I have so many small pieces of some of the exotic hardwood that I've got a piece of Wenge. It's not very long, but it's about 3/4 of an inch thick. And then I also have some zebra wood, and I like the combination of the really dark, almost black Wenge and then the zebra wood on top. So I think that's going to be the combination that I'm going to use, and I'll have to cut and glue these pieces together to make my overall block. And then according to the instructions too, you'll have to cut some thin pieces off the sides and glue them back together after you cut your channel for the actual blade. You've got to put all of these pieces together and leave sort of a beveled channel for the blade to fit in. So going to be a really cool project. Stick around. So while I was trying to cut my basic pieces to make my block, I couldn't get through this piece of Wenge on my chop saw. So we just finish it off with some hand tools. And ultimately, you wind up with these two pieces that put together will create the dimensions that you need. So a little sanding action on both the Wenge and the zebra wood, and that'll give you a nice surface to be able to glue them together. And so I was sort of at the bottom of my my urethane glue here, the Gorilla Glue. One side urethane glue, one side water, and then we'll get this thing clamped up. And this was sort of at the end of the evening, so we'll let this sit overnight. Nice and tight. And so there's the single block. I really like the color combinations between the dark Wenge. It's almost black, but it matches the grain of the zebra wood really nicely here. So per the instructions, the next thing you need to do is cut off 2 thin pieces off both sides of this block because you're going to need to do some additional work to the inner core of this plane. And so we'll need to cut a couple pieces off at 5/16 of an inch. And the other thing that I had to do is make sure this block was oversized according to the instructions, because, you know, when you go to put it on the table saw, it's going to take a ton of material out as you cut those pieces off. And so with 2 pieces cut off at 5/16 of an inch here, and I had to take extra caution here when I get the blades set up to make sure that I got accurate cuts. But those are what the 3 pieces would look like. Now the next step is to, on the inner core, you need to cut a 45-degree angle because that piece that I'm grabbing right there will be the bed for the blade. And on the other piece, and I've got a 45-degree cut already there, but on that other side, they suggest that you scoop it out with sort of a curved open area. And that's basically the escape portion for your wood shavings. And so here's another tip. You know, I instead of using a compass, I look for things around the shop that have the right curvature, and, you know, a little plastic measuring bucket worked out really well. So here you just take your time, make sure you're on the line, get a nice gradual cut here, and then ultimately I'll get this over to the spindle sander and we'll smooth out that curved cut. And basically, here's all the pieces come together. The next thing you need to do, according to the instructions, you need to carve out a couple of large round holes here on the block, but you've got to cut it straight down on top of this 45-degree bed. So the way that you can square that up is to use the piece that you just cut out, which happens to be at 45 degrees, and I've got them taped together and locked into my hold block here so that I can gouge out that material. And I just love watching Forstner bits work. It's really satisfying to see how it just tears through material. Now it required a second gouge out area here, and we'll have to clean this up with a chisel because as you turn the knob to adjust the depth of the blade, it needs to move up and down in the channel here. So basically you're creating a channel so that the adjustment knob can move back and forth. So with a sharp chisel and a little cleanup, it's all set to go. And this is it. Now you're ready to kind of glue these pieces back together into your single plane. And there's some instructions there on how you want to leave a gap between the front and the back of the plane so that the shavings can come through, and that's what that notch is there on the bottom side. And once again, it's time to wait. So while the glue is drying, there's another piece that you have to cut, and it just requires a thin piece of material, preferably a hardwood again. And both the Wenge and the Zebrawood are very hard, very dense woods. But this piece is going to be a wedged piece of wood that will sit on top of the metal blade, and with a tightening screw kind of holds the blade against the bed of the plane. So essentially this thin little piece has to be cut to size. And then there's a brass insert that goes in this piece that's provided with the kit, and you need to drill a hole for that brass insert. So in this particular hole, I think it was just 3/8. And we'll show you how the brass insert fits in there for now. We're not going to do the final assembly here for a little bit. There's quite a bit more shaping and sanding that has to be done, but I wanted to get these pieces out of the way. So essentially there's a brass insert that goes in the bottom of this wedge, and then the tightening screw will go on the top, and as the screw pushes through, it tightens against the actual blade. Now the thing from Veritas that I like with this kit is that this blade was really sharp right out of the package. And the instructions basically say all you really need to do is to hone the blade. So I've got a combination 4000, 1000 grit block here, whetstone, and I'm just cleaning up that edge a little bit. I'm not an expert when it comes to sharpening blades, but I get good results. So it turned out to be really sharp here. So the blade is good to go. Now, the last thing you need to do before you start shaping the block is to insert a brass rod, because essentially the blade and that Wenge wedge that we just created will basically lock up against that brass rod and tightens the whole thing down. But you've got to be able to drill straight through. This has to be essentially square or 90 degrees to your block plane. So a drill press is really the only way to get this done, so that you've got a clean cut for both sides. Now here, I'm back to the old shop tip of find something that works to create an arc. And as it turns out, a paint can gave me a really nice line to cut out of this block plane. And so I'm actually cutting two different curves, sort of an inside and an outside curve, to create the shape for this particular plane. And hopefully you'll see the pencil lines here in a second as to what we're going to carve out. So I also put a little curve towards the front and the back, and then I'm going to do quite a bit of shaping to kind of round out the back side of the plane so it fits my palm. But for right now, I'm going to take those basic cuts on the bandsaw. And there's that overall curved dimension on the side of the plane. So believe it or not, this video was sped up, I think, 10 times normal speed. So I was really going slow, making sure the cut was right on the line. And that saves you the grinding and the shaping time. This was the cut that I was most concerned about, but actually worked really well here on the bandsaw. So there it is. Now, I didn't just want it to be flat up the side, so essentially I went to my grinding wheel and I was holding the plane up on an angle and gradually grinding out a curve to the back side of the plane. Both curved on the vertical, but also curved on the horizontal, so that it really had a rounded shape to the back side. And I did a little bit of that same work to the front of the plane. But it really didn't need it. At that point, it's all aesthetics. The plane is going to work regardless of what the front or the back of the plane looks like. It's going to do its job. It's just comfortable to hold it in your hand that way. And this is a part of the design that you make your own. It can really be shaped any way you like. I should also mention on this plane, the instructions that come with the kit basically suggest that you work this plane to a length of 8 inches. So essentially the plane is designed to be an 8-inch plane. But I've added an inch to this design. So if you're looking at this and it seems a little bit too big, it's because it is. It's actually 9 inches long. And the extra inch was added to the front, so it didn't change the dimensions or any of the other instructions towards the back to create the assembly. And that's the core assembly, with the wedge holding it all down. So here it is, all assembled, and I have to tell you, it took a little adjustment to get it all to work. This particular wedge piece had to be thinned down in order to get it to fit underneath the brass rod. But once I got all that squared away, now it became a matter of adjusting it to the type of wood, and I've been giving it a run, and I'm actually getting nice thin little shavings out of it. That's the pine. I actually have some oak. I tried that on the oak. It actually works out really well. So and you can see this is pine, so that's pretty easy to cut through, but really soft, thin little pieces. Got a piece of poplar. I got an uneven edge on this one. But, very thin, nice little pieces. And I took a lot of time to shape this to my hand. I've got a relatively big palm. So it fits really nice, and the scoop on the other end allows me to get my hand on there to give it a good rip. So I'm really liking this thing so far. It was a great project. So here's the 360-degree view. The Danish oil settled down and turned into a semi-gloss finish on it. It works out fantastic. I highly recommend this kit from Veritas. Check out their website. They've got a bunch of different options for you. It was a really tremendous project and a great result. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us for the video. We really hope you liked it, and we also hope you subscribe to the channel. Take care.